McLachlan. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Madam President, I stand in disappointed over this proposal. However, I think it's really a special day in the Connecticut General Assembly because since my arrival in 2009, we haven't had an opportunity to have a discussion about one of the contracts that automatically is deemed approved without action by the General Assembly. So I'm grateful that we're having a discussion about this agreement today. I think it's very important. I would like to, for those outside the state capitol who don't really understand what's happening here today, I'd like to put it into layperson's terms. We all know what happened in the late 2000s. In fact, when I began my term here in 2009, we were in the middle of the Great Recession. And being a former banker, I can tell you that I had personal friends and clients who, leading up to that Great Recession, were being creative in the way they financed their primary residence. So let me just remind people what was going on in those days. Unfortunately, it's still happening. People would have credit cards maxed out and roll all the credit cards into a refinance on their home. And then they would go and buy a car that they couldn't afford, and they would cash that out and add it to the refinance on their home. And lo and behold, banks were allowing refinance of homes, even though property values were dropping at this point. They were allowing refinance for someone with good credit at 110% of the appraised value of the property. So lo and behold, as the property values continued to plummet, they were upside down. And lo and behold, not too far down the road, they were homeless, looking for a rental because they were not able to purchase another home less expensive. Now, everyone can think of a neighbor, a friend, or a family member who went through this, because it was literally thousands right here in Connecticut that experienced that. And across the country, millions who had that experience. And what did that mean? That meant that it was living beyond our means. And that's exactly what this agreement is. We're not fixing any problems, we're just refinancing. That's what we're doing. It's a refi. And a refi is always postponing the agony. The only reason to refi that makes sense is if you're decreasing your liability and getting a lower interest rate. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is postponing agony. We're not facing the problem that is vividly before us. I urge rejection of this agreement with the hope, sincere hope, that the union negotiators and the state employees understand that we are not fixing their problem, their concern about their pension plan with this action today. And to the taxpayers, we are not fixing your problem today with this refi, because all we're doing is adding $11 billion to your liability. So we're not fixing the problem. This agreement should have been, and certainly in the private sector would have been, part of a bargaining chip, part of a wider discussion of pension reform in the state of Connecticut. Republican members of the Connecticut General Assembly have time and time again proposed alternative pension benefits for state employees, new hires. I don't believe that we've ever said, at least not since I've arrived, have I ever supported the idea of slashing pension benefits. You know, I keep hearing that that's what Republicans are trying to do. On the contrary, we understand there's a commitment to current and previous state employees. But there's a reality check right now, just like there has been in the private sector and in local governments, my own hometown, and in other states as close as Rhode Island. There's a reality check that this pension plan in the state of Connecticut is going to implode like California. Does anyone know what happened in California? Well, eventually that's what's going to happen if we don't fix the problem. There was a story late last month, cover story in one of the papers of a California retiree, California state employee retiree, whose pension benefit went from $49,000, I believe, to $19,000 in one swoop. Serious problem. And my point is, why aren't we fixing the problem? All we have to do is look at what's happened in other states and look at what's happened with state government employee pensions in municipalities and in county governments elsewhere in the country. We know we're on the precipice. We know it's a problem. But we're just doing a refi. And that's what happened to millions of fellow Americans in the Great Recession. And they had a very, very painful lesson. People that I went to school with who, at age 50 years old, were facing homelessness, had lost everything that they had in any equity in their home because they were living above their means and now have no retirement and are just now, 8 to 10 years later, starting to find their way back to home ownership, approaching 60 years old. You see what I'm saying? It's a very visible problem in individual families' budgets of living beyond their means. We saw it. We're still seeing it. And now state government is continuing to do the same thing. So I wanted to share with you, especially our constituents, this comparison that refi is the wrong way to go unless it's also pension reform. At the same time, it has to be. Because you need both of those items working together. Refinance if necessary, and reform to be able to fix the problem. And I urge rejection of this proposal before us. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.